a crystal ball flip for the only unsigned five-star in the 2023 class. Plus, Matt Rhule joins the show and tells us his plan to get Nebraska back to competing for national championships. And we find out how Iowa's thinly veiled threats for Brian Ferentz affect recruiting. All that and more as the College Football Recruiting Show starts right now. Alongside Blair and Gulo, I'm Emily Proud. Please submit some questions in the chat. We will take them at the end of the show. Also, while I've got you, hit that like button. We are trying to get to 100 likes today. We already have 23 now, Blair. So we're doing all right. I think we'll get it. So you go hit that like button and we are going to hit the headlines. Hey, Blair, major news from you today. You just flipped a crystal ball for five-star tight end Deuce Robinson from Georgia to USC. Why?
Yes, Emily, and I think the longer this is dragged out, the better the chances have become for the Trojans. And after getting a temperature check on the situation, I felt that my crystal ball to Georgia was no longer the accurate pulse of the recruitment. Now, does this mean that he's going to commit to USC? No, not yet. I'm not fully convinced yet, but I do like where things are trending for the Trojans from a momentum standpoint.
All right, more on Deuce Robinson in just a bit. Meanwhile, Washington with an early gift is four-star quarterback Austin Mack announcing he's reclassifying to the 2023 class. So he's now considered the 8th-ranked quarterback in that class. How happy should Huskies fans be?
Absolutely ecstatic. I want them to go and maybe pull out the boats for some sailgating. Remember, this is a program that suffered a late flip last cycle when Lincoln Kienholz changed his commitment to Ohio State and he signed with the Buckeyes. The Huskies also have in-state quarterback E.J. Caminong already committed in the 24 class, so Austin Mack reclassifying is a significant boost for that staff up in Seattle.
A decommitment for four-star Jason Robinson. The whiteout decommitted from USC, but told our Greg Biggins that he's still considering the Trojans. Blair, what kind of player is now on the market?
An absolutely fantastic athlete with some of the best body control that you'll see from a wide receiver in Southern California. He's at the same high school that produced Juju Smith-Schuster, and definitely not as physical as Juju was back in the day at Long Beach Poly, but Jason Robinson demands that same level of attention from opposing cornerbacks.
For our Tom Loy of Irish Illustrated, Notre Dame is expected to promote tight ends coach Jared Parker to offensive coordinator. Now, he called plays for West Virginia in 2 seasons before joining the Irish staff this year. So what does this move mean recruiting-wise, Blair?
Well, I think it's widely known now, right, that this wasn't Notre Dame's first choice offensive coordinator. So Marcus Freeman will have a lot of more questions to answer this spring and summer when it comes to the offense. It becomes a bit more complicated for the Irish to attract top-level talent. But I do think that players like C.J. Carr, Cam Williams, Jack Larson, 3 of the top-rated commits, they have to continue to build that momentum that the staff already started in this class.
Speaking of tight ends, some late news this afternoon. The top tight end in the 2024 class and current Georgia commit Landon Thomas will visit Florida State in March. Now, this is per our Knowles 247. Thomas has been committed since last July. Blair, what's your read on this?
It might suggest that maybe there are some question marks about how Georgia and what that offense will look like, as obviously how recruits and commits are beginning to look at the departure of Todd Monken. And look, Georgia's offense might not look the same, and Mike Mopo is going to be taking over. The tight end, how prominently will it be featured? I'm sure this is something that other recruiting staffs will start to pitch to prospects that are considering Georgia.
As we continue our quest to 100 likes, I know you're going to like our next guest here. So if you hear me, hit that like button. Hey, it's Director of Recruiting, Steve Wilfong, here to keep us up to date on all the latest recruiting news and intel. So Steve, how about the news of Blair's crystal ball flip for Deuce Robinson to USC? What's your sense of where things stand with the five-star?
Well, I think starting around National Signing Day, we started to see things pick up for the Trojans when he didn't sign. And a source over there at Pinnacle High School said to me that day, USC is very much in it on National Signing Day. And then talking to a source last night around the Trojans, I think that they feel like they're in a good place for him. But we'll see what happens. This is a recruitment that's had several leaders and several programs in the mix, but there's no question that right now Deuce Robinson's picking up steam in this recruitment.
Yeah, I felt like the Trojans were the team to beat. Ever since he took that official visit back in the summer, they obviously picked up Walker Lyons on signing day earlier this month. That's another highly coveted tight end that will be joining the program in a year and a half. But, you know, when you think about Deuce Robinson, you think about the Trojans, it's been the program closest to home. He has a really good relationship with Lincoln Riley, as well as the commits that are already headed to campus with him. Zachariah Branch, Malachi Nelson, his really close friend in the state of Arizona, Jacoby Lane, signed with the Trojans earlier this month. I felt like Georgia had a lot of the buzz. They had a lot of the momentum. But the longer this is dragged out, like I mentioned earlier, the more it just seems like USC has now regained a lot of that buzz, a lot of the momentum. The pendulum keeps swinging. That's what I wrote earlier this morning. And we obviously know that he's got the MLB draft aspirations. And a source close to the recruitment said, hey, he's going out there hitting home runs at Dodger Stadium. You think he's going to want to go to Athens? So that's kind of the way things are shaking out right now.
Blair, I know you like bonus nuggets. We used to have them when we did the 24/7 Sports podcast, and a Pinnacle High bonus nugget revolving around USC. But Dylan Raiola, five-star quarterback, #1 player in 2024. I'm told things have really picked up as far as communication goes over the last couple of weeks with Lincoln Riley and Dylan Raiola. Now, we know Lincoln Riley's been all over Raiola since he decommitted from Ohio State, but I think they've had even more dialogue as of late. And there's been a lot of buzz around Georgia, a lot of buzz around Nebraska with Dylan Raiola, but I wouldn't sleep on USC in this recruitment either. He trains in Los Angeles, so he's going to be out there quite a bit. He took his last visit in January to USC, where his mom got to see the place. She loved it. They'll be back at USC as well, so I wouldn't sleep on the Trojans with Dylan Raiola either.
Okay, good to know. Blair, remind the people, when is Deuce Robinson expected to make his decision?
He has set a self-imposed deadline of April 1st, and that's because he wants to get everything in order by the time he has to move in to whatever college program he chooses. But listen, this is a player who we've mentioned on this show a number of times. He's going to be an MLB draft selection if everything goes well for him this spring. He checks off a ton of boxes, 6'6", 225, has drawn comparisons to Aaron Judge just for his raw power, his build. So the MLB draft is still a big thing that is kind of draping a shadow over this recruitment. So whether he chooses Georgia, whether he chooses USC, I think this is going to stretch into the summer, heading into that draft, trying to see where he ends up going. And he's also really been developing relationships with both baseball staffs. So this is one of those recruitments that I feel like every week we're trying to, gauge or figure out new angles. Right now, I like where the Trojans sit right now for that April 1st deadline that he has set for his commitment.
We got Tyler Chambers in the chat here saying, you said not to sleep on USC for Raiola. How much fun would Deuce Robinson and Raiola teaming up be? Blair, can you envision it?
Yeah, two baseball guys that are now obviously at the top of their positions in their respective classes. They have developed a relationship. Dylan Raiola transferred into Pinnacle High School from Chandler for his senior season. He is now enrolled there, and I'm sure they've been able to work out and they've been able to train together. I think that would be obviously a remarkable recruiting pitch for the Trojans to be able to land Deuce and to potentially pitch and say, hey, come throw the #1 tight end in the country.
Oh my goodness. All right, let's go to the 2024 class where Colin Simmons is one of the most coveted prospects in the country. He is the #3 edge and plans to head west for a few visits. So Steve, what's the latest on the Texas defender?
Yeah, well, one visit that looks like is going to happen is a trip to Arizona State over his spring break. That is a program that they're very excited to get out to and check out. USC is another maybe for them right now. They'd like to go see what Lincoln Riley and the Trojans have to offer. And then Colorado, led by Nick Williams' recruitment there, former Texas A&M field staffer that knows Colin Simmons and his family well. He's now defensive ends coach at Colorado. The spring game is on the radar for them in April. Colorado's going to have a lot of blue chippers at their spring game. If Colin Simmons comes, there won't be a player more coveted than him in Boulder that weekend. And some other programs that could get some visits here in the spring, a return to LSU. He's been to LSU so many times, so while that's not a priority, they may be able to fit that in. And then Texas A&M as well.
Jamonte Waller is another prospect that's going to be really busy once the dead period ends, Steve. The four-star edge rusher is not going to be short on visits. What's on the horizon for his recruitment?
Yeah, so when Austin Mack reclassified, it opened a spot in our top 247 to slide a young man in, and Waller was the guy that our scouting department moved in after 106 tackles, 24 stops for loss, 11 and a half sacks, and helping his team win a state championship. He's become one of the most coveted players in the country at the position. Penn State, I think, has set the tone in this recruitment. Talking to him and talking to sources with knowledge of the recruitment, he got to Happy Valley in January, and they're recruiting him as a linebacker. He's got that versatility there in the front seven. He likes linebacker U. He's built a great relationship with Manny Diaz and that staff. So Penn State has set the tone going into what's going to be a busy March and April for him. It's going to be tough for Penn State to hang on to this lead. He's going to visit Alabama on March 4th. He's going to go to Florida State and Florida March 10th and 11th. He's going to hit Texas A&M on March 25th. Then April, he's going to go to LSU on the 1st, Tennessee on the 3rd, Ole Miss on the 6th, Auburn on the 7th, Georgia on the 8th, Ohio State on the 15th, Oregon on the 29th. So it's going to be a very busy spring for him. I think that Alabama and Georgia, as it stands right now, going into this wave of visits, are in best position to unseat Penn State at the top. But I would imagine he'll take some officials after that. He'll get back to Happy Valley, so we'll see what happens.
Man, I thought Blair's travel schedule was pretty crazy in the spring. That is impressive. Steve, you also put in a crystal ball in favor of Georgia to land four-star athlete DeMello Jones. Why do you like the Dogs to add Jones to their already awesome and #1 class?
Well, I think this is one of the most coveted targets on the board for Georgia, with Kirby Smart and several staffers going to see him during the evaluation period. He's built a relationship with Fran Brown, defensive backs coach, also has clicked with Mike Bobo. He could play on either side of the ball for Georgia if he does pick the Bulldogs. He helped lead Swainsboro to the state championship game as a junior, averaged over 10 yards per carry, only needed 122 touches to score 20 times, turned 14 receptions into 7 receiving scores. So he's a touchdown waiting to happen. That's also been a 3-year starter on defense. 122 tackles over that span, 10 passes defended, 5 interceptions. So easy to see why he's so coveted by Georgia. And Georgia's going to get him back to campus on March 2nd. He's approaching 30 offers. He also took a visit to Alabama and South Carolina in January. So those are programs high on his list. But I think Georgia has set the tone. He visited there at the end of the season, and now he's coming back in March. He's got a great rapport with the staff and loves what he sees on the field.
We talked about Deuce Robinson earlier and how baseball is such an important factor in his decision. Amari Jefferson is currently committed to Tennessee for baseball, but is also drawing interest from a number of national programs on the football side of it. Steve, what's the latest in Amari Jefferson's football recruitment?
Well, you got some SEC powers in the mix here. You got Alabama. He's going to visit there on March 4th. You have Georgia going to get back there on March 11th. Tennessee on March 25th, where he's getting to know the football staff as well as he knows the baseball staff. Clemson's on March 18th. And then you have another program that we're starting to hear alongside all these blue chippers. Who do you think it is, guys? Colorado. April 8th, he'll be out in Boulder. He's a top target for Deion Sanders and that staff on the offensive side of the ball. 72 receptions for almost 1,400 yards and 17 touchdowns as a junior. I think Colorado is one of the programs recruiting him the hardest. He's really started to click with that Georgia staff. He's excited to see where he stands with Alabama coming out of that visit. And then he's starting to really click with Coach Heupel and Coach Halsey at Tennessee. So those are just some of the contenders for him in this recruitment. I think this next wave of visits will be big for his process. And he also had a really good trip to South Carolina in January. We all know not to sleep on Coach Beamer and company for a top target of theirs.
Certainly not. All right, we are 10 likes away from 50, so if you hear the sound of my voice, please hit that like button. Would love to hit 50 to the halfway point in the show. Steve, I got another question for you here. Aaron Nolan is a top 10 quarterback in the 2024 class, but the top name. He has some visits lined up in March. Where is he headed once the dead period ends?
Yeah, this guy's a fantastic player. Led his team to a state championship. 55 touchdowns passing, 6 rushing touchdowns. His stock is starting to soar. He's going to be at Miami the first weekend of March, and no program has prioritized him more at this point, in my opinion, than the Hurricanes. They've been on him for months, have made him feel like he's their top target at the position. He really likes Coach Cristobal, loves the new offensive coordinator hire. And so Miami looking to build on that momentum when they get him to campus here in a couple weeks. Another program that could make a move for him is Ohio State. He's going to spend a couple days in Columbus at the end of March, bleeding into April. Coach Day, Coach Dennis went out to see him during the evaluation period. He's also starting to get to know Coach Brian Hartline. And that's a visit where Ohio State is not offered yet, but he's expecting one on his visit. And anytime a young man who's as recruited as Air Nolan, recently offered by Alabama, had a great visit to Tuscaloosa, A&M, he's been recruited for them for a while. So that's a visit to a program that hasn't offered yet. It's obvious he has very high interest in them. And I think that visit to Ohio State will be a real needle mover. Now, Ohio State, they're in on a couple quarterbacks besides him, Julian Sand, that they offered in January. They're trying to flip him from Bama, and Jaden Davis. I think they're in prime position for him alongside Michigan and maybe some others like Tennessee, Clemson, North Carolina, to name a few of his suitors.
Steve, let's go out to your neck of the woods there in the Indy area. Danny O'Neil, he's a coveted quarterback, a number of programs pursuing him. He's got no shortage of contenders and programs that are chasing his signature. What's the latest with him heading into the spring?
Well, he has locked in one visit. He's going to go to Michigan State on March 14th. The Spartans have not offered yet. Jake Merklinger is a guy that we know Michigan State is recruiting very heavily right now. But Danny O'Neil is a guy that is been on their radar for a while, been building a relationship with Jay Johnson. And I think if Michigan State opts to offer Danny O'Neil, they'll be in the thick of that. A couple programs that we know Danny O'Neil is extremely high on, Illinois and Colorado. He visited both in January. He's also went to Illinois back in the fall. He's really enjoyed his time with Coach Bielema and Coach Lunny. Obviously, proximity to home. Champagne's about 90 minutes from Indianapolis, and then it's a program on the rise. Illinois signed a really good receiver class last year. I think those are some of the things that are standing out to him about the Illini. And then with Colorado, he's really clicked with Sean Lewis, former head coach at Kent State, has recruited the Midwest well. They had a phenomenal time in Boulder talking offense with Sean Lewis and what he's done with his track record of high-powered offenses and quarterbacks lighting up the scoreboard. And then, man, they had a great time talking to Coach Deion Sanders, and that made for a special visit. So those two programs are recruiting the heck out of him. He really likes Illinois and Colorado. Louisville, his relationship with the Brahms from Purdue to Louisville. Louisville's in the middle of it, and Kentucky and Purdue are a couple of other programs that certainly are high on Danny as well.
Love it. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. All right, check out new episodes of the Wiltfong Whip Around. They drop every Monday on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. Every episode is can't miss, but I hear this upcoming Monday, there's going to be a little twist to the show, so check that out. Hey, it's a new era for Nebraska football. Matt Rhule is taking over and undertaking a program in transition. I caught up with the new Huskers head coach, and here's that conversation with Matt Rhule. Well, Coach, you were hired by Nebraska less than a month before the early signing period in December, yet you still finished with a top 25 class in this cycle. So how were you able to put together a group that, rankings-wise, finished the highest among Big Ten West teams?
Well, I think a lot of credit goes to our staff. Certainly the recruiting staff that was here before, coaching staff had done a nice job of getting some really good football players, and we were able to go out and get a few more. And kind of old school, get on the phone, start talking to people. And thankfully for us, there's a lot of people that were familiar with us from Temple and from Baylor, and I think that carried over.
What did you hope to accomplish with this class, and really how does this group of 28 signees meet those expectations?
I think we really wanted to go out and find some speed. I think when you get guys like Malachi Coleman, Jalen Lloyd, Bryce Turner, you definitely have some speed. And some big guys on the offensive and defensive lines who can help us establish really the way that we want to play.
You mentioned it. One guy in particular I know you and fans are really excited about, Malachi Coleman. How would you describe not just the football player, but the athlete you're getting in the Lincoln, Nebraska native?
Well, he's competitive. He's fast. He's dynamic, explosive, probably an even better person. And I'm excited. I think the sky's the limit. I think there's so much that he can do. I think he's a guy that can play on offense or on defense, or even potentially have a role on both. And so, getting him was a big thing for us, a big thing for the program. And again, as much for who he is, as much as anything else.
Yeah, and you've had success at a high level before, but while you were coaching in the NFL for a few years, I mean, so much has changed when it comes to talent acquisition. You've got the transfer portal exploding, and oh, by the way, there's this thing called name, image, and likeness now. So how have you had to adjust the way you bring in talent after spending the last 3 seasons away from college football?
I think the biggest thing is recognizing that it's still about making sure that young people have a good experience, making sure that you have a plan for them, a vision for them. And then that your current players can speak to, hey, you know what they say is true. That's the number one thing for me. For us going to the transfer portal, knowing that there's some players out there that either knew us from our previous stops or recognized us from the NFL. I think that obviously helped us as we try to get the program back to where it needs to be. And name, image, and likeness. I think players have a right to monetize what they can do and what they do on the football field, and how it markets out into the real world. So I'm all for that. We're never going to use that. We're not going to just go buy young people. We want people that want to be here. But if they're here, we want to make sure that they can get taken care of based upon their accessibility out there in the real world.
I got to ask you about your tweet here from a few weeks ago. It was pretty simple. You just said, "I love Nebraska." What prompted you to tweet that, and how have you been able to really endear yourself to the Husker fan base so quickly?
Well, we were out in Nebraska. We were out. I can't remember exactly where we were, but we were at a small town somewhere in Nebraska, and stopping in and meeting people and just seeing how passionate people are about this program, about the university. And we're talking about good people, real people. And so I left, man. I just felt so good about, hey, you know what? I get to live here now. I get to raise my kids here now. And, so I said, I love Nebraska. And I love the University of Nebraska and certainly love, UNL football and UNL athletics. I just meant the ethos of this state, people that get up every single day trying to make the world a better place. And it just kind of hit me meeting those people.
Yeah, when you're interacting with fans and people in the community, how much do you feel their hunger to get this program back to competing for national championships like they were a few decades ago?
Emily, I'll tell you, it hits you right away. I think one of my first days I was out in Scottsbluff, Nebraska, which is, maybe 6 hours, maybe even 7 hours from Lincoln, and just talking to people and hearing them, just the passion in their voice, the pride in their state and their university, the love they have for this football team. It hit me right away, man. We're on a mission to bring Nebraska football back to true relevance, and then hopefully eventually greatness. And that's what gets me up every morning.
Yeah, how much do you relish in that pressure to get back?
You know what? I think pressure is a privilege. I don't live too much in the results. I try to stay day by day. I think for me, the biggest thing is that pressure, that expectation level. I try to utilize that to have me just every day wake up and not be entitled, not be worried about the future, just be very much in the moment, attack each day, and try to make sure that I'm working as hard as these people expect me to work.
All right, big picture here. The Big Ten will look a little different next season in 2024 with the LA schools joining the conference. It will truly become a coast-to-coast league. Now, you don't hesitate to recruit outside of the current Big Ten footprint, as evident by this year's class. So I'm curious, what is the pitch for players to pick Nebraska over maybe some of those Southern and West Coast schools?
Well, I think all schools are great. And so what I'll say is, I would like to think that after our time at Temple and Baylor and the history of Nebraska and the things that, Coach Osborne and those guys and Coach Osborne and his staff did, this should be one of the premier player development places in the country. It's long been committed to things that are now staples where it really started at Nebraska, training tables and academic support. So I think if a young person really wants to get developed, if they want to come to college, get a great education, compete for championships, become a great player, go off and play in the National Football League and have an even better job afterwards, that's what we, live, eat, and breathe. And so and not every school is right for everybody. We're going to have high expectations for our guys. We want to work really, really hard. But if they're all about that, what I just talked about, then they'll love the University of Nebraska.
What's the biggest thing you need to accomplish this spring?
Well, that's a great question. I
Could be
think,
many.
you know, these guys really know how to work. I think Coach Frost and his staff did a great job teaching these guys how to work. I think we have to just really establish the physical style that we want to play with, whether it's tackling, whether it's perimeter blocking, whether it's stopping the run, running the football. We want to be a physical team, and that only comes from practice, your standards at practice. And so that'll be the biggest thing for me that, you know, I want to establish so that when we hit the fall, hit the season, it's not about establishing standards. It's about trying to win ball games.
I love it. Looking forward to it. Thank you, Coach.
Thank you.
Thoroughly enjoyed that conversation. You could tell he was very chipper and excited about what's to come at Nebraska. Blair, following the recruiting game, I mean, from a recruiting standpoint, what is the biggest challenge facing Matt Rhule at Nebraska in your eyes?
Yeah, now he's going to have to focus on being able to juggle everything at once, right? Being a coach, getting that team to be more physical, like you mentioned this spring, the official visits. A lot of things have changed since he left for the NFL, and this is his first true recruiting class. You know, it was one thing for him to come in late like he did in the 2023 cycle, put the finishing touches on that class, but now he's going to have to do everything, and he's going to have to do everything well and doing everything quick, because spring official visits are coming, summer commitments are coming, and this is a program that needs all the buzz it can generate. It needs that sort of attention. It needs to grab headlines. So I think he needs to hit the ground running. He's going to have to get some early commitments to build some buzz heading into the season, and then the results will speak for themselves. The results will do what they need to do for him as a recruiter. And so it's going to be really important for him to get some momentum and get things going here in the spring and the summer heading into that season, which is going to be super important for him.
We have seen him turn programs around very quickly before. I want to address a comment here in the chat. It says, hit the like button so I don't have to hear Emily Proud complain about it anymore. I think that's great advice. You should go ahead and hit the like button. We're at 56 likes. We're trying to get to 100. And you might have noticed on Tuesday, we started our series of breaking down the top prospects region by region. So let's take you to the Midwest for our next region highlight. And to do that, a big welcome into our friend Allen Trieu. Allen, a lot of talent in your region in the 2024 class. As you look to evaluate it just as a whole, how does the top group of prospects in the 24 cycle compare to maybe previous cycles in the Midwest region?
Yeah, I think it's right there with some of the best years we've had recently. I mean, we have two guys from the Midwest that are in the top 32, so in 5-star range right now. Quite a few prospects in the top 75 to 100. And then I think it's deep. It's been getting deeper. If you look at through the months of January and February, some Midwest recruits who were more regional recruits have really blown up and become national guys. And I think as our national team has been looking at some of those recruits, you're going to see guys not only at the top of the top 247, but we're going to have some new additions to the back end, I think, over the next few weeks.
The top prospect in the Midwest region is someone we have talked about on this show before and will continue to do again. Williams Nwaneri, the number 3 prospect in the 24 class and the top defensive lineman. Allen, what makes him so special?
Well, I think he was already a Power 5 recruit, already a guy who was going to get recruited coast to coast as a sophomore, but he's really taken his game up to another level. His junior film was outstanding, and he's gone out to some events. He was at the UC Report event in Kansas City last spring and really moves exceptionally well, tests exceptionally well for a player of his size. So you see somebody with that frame that can play on the edge, but he can shift inside when he needs to, and is tough to deal with because he's got the size to power rush you, but he's got the quickness and the agility, as you can see in some of those clips, to win with his first step and win with finesse as well.
Ryan Wingo Allen is another player that we've been mentioning quite often. He's a top 5 wide receiver in the 2024 class. What stands out to you about his game and what makes him such a desired prospect on the field?
Well, you see him take off there in that first clip. He's a track guy. He's run, sub 11 a number of times in the 100-meter dash, and you can see what he can do from a versatility standpoint. He can return kicks. Comes from a family of running backs. Thought initially when he was young he might be a high-level running back. He's turned into a wide receiver recruit, but he's a guy that you can motion into the backfield. You can give it to him on jet sweeps. You can throw it to him short. He can take the top off of defense long. So I think just a combination of being, 6'1", 6'2", put together physically and having that track background, he's a true thoroughbred recruit in this class.
Certainly. How about Mylan Graham? He's a few spots below Wingo in our wide receiver rankings. He's number 7 at the position out of Indiana. Ohio State leading in the crystal ball. What kind of talent could the Buckeyes get with him?
Yeah, they're going to have some challenges, though, because he's going to get out to some southern schools in the spring, and that could make this recruitment interesting. But another guy similar to Ryan Wingo, where you see these bigger receivers who can do things after the catch. He's another guy who can contribute in the return game, which is rare for somebody who's 6'2" and built the way that he is. I think he's going to go out this spring and get on the national circuit and try to move himself up. New Haven, Indiana, not a place that's had a ton of high major Power 5 recruits. I think he's going to prove himself among the best when he goes out on the 7-on-7 circuit. He's going to play with some nationally based teams, but from a standpoint of size and versatility, he's definitely one of the best in the region.
Allen, the last prospect we want to discuss is Justin Scott, the 4-star defensive lineman. At one point seemed like a Notre Dame lean. He's officially visiting Georgia once the dead period ends. What stands out to you about his game and makes him one of the best prospects in the Midwest?
Yeah, he's one that I had a chance to see live in the fall, and he made a lot of plays on defense, extremely quick first step. He's playing basketball right now at his size and playing it well, and then was actually outstanding on the offensive side of the ball too. I think he would be a Power 5 top 50 recruit on the offensive side of the ball. But 6'5", 315 pounds. We don't get a lot of high-level interior defensive linemen in the Midwest. He looks like the kind of guys that they grow on trees down south. He's just an exceptional athlete at 315 pounds, and you can see why he's coveted from not only schools up here like Michigan, Notre Dame, Ohio State, but even some of those schools down south like Georgia, Alabama are now on him as well.
Allen, you're the best. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, keeping with the Midwestern vibes here on the show, the Big Ten. Iowa currently holds the number 2 class, but all is not well in Hawkeye land. Despite a strong class early in the cycle, you see it here, a shutout bowl victory and an 8-win season. Well, the headlines are all about the offense and the man leading it, Brian Ferentz. So, to sift through the noise, let's welcome in Sean Bock of Hawkeye Insider. Sean, Brian Ferentz's new contract has people kind of in a tizzy. It comes with terms that Iowa has to average 25 points a game and win at least 7 games. So it's easy to say that's not the greatest look optically, but how has all of this affected recruiting?
Well, one of the big storylines with, this Brian Ferentz news and everything that's happened with Iowa really in the past year with the offense. And one of the big things that happened this fall was the commitment of James Razar, the 4-star quarterback from Jacksonville, Bishop Kenny. He picked Iowa over the likes of Indiana, Wake Forest, and Georgia Tech, and was really a surprise commitment. It actually happened right after that Iowa State loss, the Cy-Hawk game where the Hawkeyes only had 7 points and, really couldn't muster up much offense. And that's where those whole storylines and the whole talk of, Iowa's non-successful offense really started to perk up. And, with Razar in the class, and a big reason why he committed to the Hawkeyes was because of Brian Ferentz. That was a huge reason why he committed to the Hawkeyes. And, with Razar in there.
Oh, sounds like we might have lost Sean there. Hoping to work to get him back in a bit. But Blair, you follow college football and obviously college recruiting. I mean, what was your thoughts on that peculiar contract, I'll call it?
Yeah, I think it's obviously something that had to be said, and they put it in writing, right? I remember in this previous class, Kyler Casper, a 4-star wide receiver from the state of Arizona, the son of Kevin Casper, a legacy who played at Iowa, went on to the NFL. He ends up choosing Oregon, but he had Iowa in his final list for such a long time. But the biggest reason why he wasn't going to be committing or signing with the Hawkeyes was because of the offense. For a receiver, it's just not an attractive pace. It's not a style of offense or a brand of football that's going to be airing the football around or scoring a ton of points. So, for them to put that in writing, for them to make it known that, hey, these are the expectations. This is what we need. This is what we need to work for. It obviously sets a benchmark, and I think it's a motivator, right? And I think it's something that they can pitch to recruits and say, hey, look, we're actually pushing for this. We actually want to score points. Come play for us. We want to light up the scoreboard. Trust us. We're not going to be just a boring football team.
All right, I'm hearing that we just got Sean back. Hopefully we can bring him back into the conversation. Are you there, Sean? Hello.
Yep.
Welcome back in. Appreciate you joining us again on this show. We're talking all things Iowa right now. And speaking of, some in-state recruiting, I'm going to ask about Grant Brix. He's a top target for Iowa. Has yet to commit, though. So what's the latest on the offensive lineman's recruitment?
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. Had some internet issues. But yeah, Grant Brix, one of the top names on the board for Iowa in this offensive line class in 2024. The Hawkeyes already have a commitment from in-state four-star offensive lineman Cody Fox, who was a really early commitment for the Hawkeyes in this class, committed right before his sophomore season. Had he not been from small-town Iowa, would have had more offers. But with Brix, another big-bodied offensive lineman, 6'6", 275, 280 pounds, really impressive prospect who, once again, is a small-town kid and, has really seen his offer list take off. He's visiting Iowa on March 5th, going to Oklahoma on March 4th, the day before. Going to Nebraska later in March, and is also visiting, looking at visits at Illinois, Penn State, and a number of other programs. So we'll see what happens there. I mean, I know Iowa's really high on him. Iowa head coach Kirk Ferentz and offensive line coach George Barnett went to Brix's high school during the evaluation period, got to see him up close. He's been to Iowa City, kind of one of those rare prospects from Iowa where he's kind of visited everywhere. He has been just about everywhere that is offered him. And is going to see probably more of those schools here in the next couple weeks and next couple months when things really start opening up.
Sean, it seems like things are changing at Iowa. They want to score more points. They put that in writing, but they're also diving into the transfer portal a bit more. Only one signee from the transfer portal in 2021, only one in 2022, and then 7 in 2023. How do you think Iowa will use the transfer portal moving forward?
Yeah, they've really used it as a tool. I know there was a lot of criticism with this staff from the last cycle of the transfer portals last offseason where, they received a lot of criticism. I mean, they took one tight end, and that tight end has not really made an impact or did not really make an impact this past season. But they really saw what they, the issues that they had on offense this year. And, they made it a point to go get a quarterback in Cade McNamara, and that kind of set the tone from there. Picked up 2 offensive linemen. We're able to flip Dejon Parker from Virginia. We're able to get Rusty Fett from Miami, Ohio, who a lot of Power 5 schools are really in on. And they were also able to, refill that linebacker position with Nick Jackson from Virginia. The Hawkeyes were able to beat out Oklahoma and LSU for him to fill that need where Jack Campbell was this past year, who was also the Butkus Award winner. So getting those guys in the transfer portal is really big for this Iowa staff because they need to find ways to refill this roster and use the portal as a tool. And I know, there's the whole mantra of development at the Iowa program, but, using the transfer portal as a tool to really bolster that roster has really been big for this program.
Certainly. So we mentioned that Iowa sits in the top 15 for 2024. It's still pretty early, though, with just 6 commitments on the board. As you project forward with this class, how high can it go?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a top 25, 30 class, but I think the Iowa staff is okay with that. They want to get guys that they feel can fit this program, can, really develop here in Iowa City and really, turn into players that they've had a lot of success with. I mean, it all starts in the state. They've done a fantastic job. Like I mentioned before, getting Fox early in the class. They have 3 in-state linebackers who are listed as 3 stars as 24/7 Sports. That can be see their ranking increase eventually. And they have a number of other guys that they're really in on. Titus Cram is a 3-star running back from Bondurant, Iowa, who is really high on Iowa State and a number of other schools along with the Hawkeyes. And there's a couple other guys too, Caleb Benning from Omaha West Side, who Iowa's really in on. A number of other guys. I don't think they're going to land the Caden Proctor type piece in this class, but I think they can land a number of prospects that, can have high floors and, eventually be developed well in Iowa City.
Sean, appreciate you coming on twice today. Thanks for coming back. I appreciate it. You have a good one.
You too. Thank you, guys.
All right, keep it locked into Hawkeye Insider for all things Iowa. Shout out to Sean, though, for coming back. If you enjoyed his analysis, please hit that like button. We're at 65 likes. We're getting really close to 100. Really trying to hit that 100 mark. So smash that like button and check out Hawkeye Insider. Blair, we have arrived at our favorite time of the show. Oh, there's Hawkeye Insider again. We're going to answer some questions here. Oh, first I need to tell you about this podcast, though. Andrew Ivins and Cooper Patagna, I promise you they're not that serious as they look on their pictures here. But new episodes dropping every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I think they had an NFL draft analyst, Lance Zierlein, on the last podcast. You're definitely going to want to check that out. Okay, now we can answer your viewer questions. And we got a lot today. You guys were all over the chat. We really appreciate it. Again, hit that like button, trying to get to 100 by the end of this show. Blair, our first question here, let's go to Andrew, asking, assuming the Ducks don't land Raiola, who could they target at quarterback?
Yeah, they'll have to pivot and they'll have to figure out what's next. The one quarterback that has already visited this year is Luke Moga. He's a 3-star quarterback from the state of Arizona, and one of the first offers that the new staff sent out. So you would assume that, if everything checks out during the spring evaluation period, if they like what they see out of him in that in-person eval, that offer will then be in writing and he can kind of be one of those cornerstone commitments for them. I know he likes them early on. He's been really busy taking visits. And then you have to go up and down the West Coast and look at a quarterback like Elijah Brown from Mater Dei, who we mentioned on the previous show earlier this week, or even an Isaac Wilson, who does have an offer from Oregon, the brother of Zach Wilson, starting to narrow things down and get into focus with some visits and some schools. So if the ship starts to sail on Dylan Raiola, the new staff there, Dan Lanning and the new offensive coordinator, they will need to pivot and they'll need to move fast. Because remember, they had to scramble at the end of the 2023 cycle after losing Dante Moore, and they need to hit a big quarterback here in this 24 class.
All right, I am being told by Victor that if I bring up Wisconsin, then he will hit the like button. I respond to threats, so absolutely. Here is your Wisconsin. All right, next question here, though, from Justin is, do you think with Matt Rhule, Nebraska becomes more of a player with 4 and 5 stars moving forward?
Absolutely, and I think it's going to boil down to what they show on the field. I don't think he has to win big. I don't think he needs to, get 8, 9, 10 wins in his first year. All he has to do is show a semblance of a heartbeat, or to be able to show attractive football, or a place where the athlete will be spotlighted, and it's going to be a platform for that player to build a brand. I think we all know that Nebraska and the fan base, and obviously in that conference, the brand speaks for itself. So all Matt Rhule needs to do is show a semblance of life, and that program is headed in the right direction. And then I do think that the 4 stars, the 5 stars like Dylan Raiola, they will pay attention. They will take notice of what's happening in Lincoln. And, it's always fun when Nebraska is good, and it's always fun when Nebraska is recruiting at a high level.
Yeah, I love that Matt Rhule didn't shy away from, admitting, we have a really rich history, and that sets the bar really high. He says the first thing that he hears from fans when he talks to them in the community is, hey, remember when we were playing for national championships and winning national championships? I would like to get back to that level. We've also seen Matt Rhule be a pretty darn good program builder. So excited to see what he does with Nebraska. All right, Mega H here. Who are some of the top schools for Xavier Brown?
Offers. You think about the who's who of college football. Xavier Brown has them on his list: Bama, Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, USC. His recruitment is really coast to coast. And what's interesting is that he plays at Mater Dei in Southern California. He showed up in South Florida earlier this offseason to play for the South Florida Express. And that's a 7-on-7 club team based, I think, in the city of Miami. So Miami's also involved and offered. And you would have to think that maybe Mario Cristobal is working the phones heavily there to try to get one of the best corners, one of the best defensive prospects in this 2024 class. So he will be taking visits. He'll be hitting the road and making sure he figures out what he likes. Hasn't narrowed his list by any means, but if they are a prominent blue blood in college football, you can bet that Xavier Brown is on that draft board.
Yeah, we have
or
him
on the recruiting board, not a draft board, but eventually he'll be a draft.
He'll be on there too.
eventually.
Yeah, exactly. We have him as our number 9 cornerback in the class. As soon as I see corner, though, I mean, I immediately think Colorado and Deion Sanders. I'm sure he'll be sniffing around his recruitment as well. This next question is from Nicholas Barone. What is the latest with Elijah Brown?
This is another prospect who I think is in wait and see mode. Greg Biggins, our good friend and recent birthday boy, will tell you that Elijah Brown just operates differently. You know, his heart beats at a different pace. He has kind of ice run through his veins. He really is calm and serene, and I think he's taken that same approach onto the recruiting scene. Hasn't really been a big visit guy, hasn't been talking up every school, but he does have a number of offers. You know, I mentioned UCLA and USC with a couple other prospects in last week's episode, and this is a player who I think is a target for the local schools. Now, we'll see what USC does with Dylan Raiola, and then we'll see what UCLA does after getting a 5-star in Dante Moore, and whether maybe they want to go in a different direction in this cycle. But yeah, he's got Tennessee, he's got Bama, he's got a number of schools that have already offered that maybe have moved on and gotten a quarterback commitment already. So I think for a player like Elijah Brown, it's important to kind of just stay patient, see what happens, see how things shake out, and see what's available heading into the spring, and then obviously the official visits in the summer. But he's a player that just kind of moves at a different pace, so we're not expecting him to make a commitment next week or the week after. He's going to be taking his time.
I love those commitments. You know, you keep us hanging for a little bit. Interested to see what happens there. Hey, we're still trying to get to 100 likes. We're at 67 right now. You can continue to like the video all night long. We would love that, actually. Not just like, we would love it. Also, appreciate the chat. It is absolutely wild today. We got a comment here from Peanut saying that our show is pre-recorded. It's not. We are live. Hello, Peanut. That's why we answer your live questions. Once again, if you didn't see Peanut's comment in the chat, I'm just going to keep calling him Peanut. It's because you're not subscribed to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. So please make sure to do that. I promise you the chat is a very fun place to be. We also get fun little nuggets from our director of research. There's tons of great things there, and there's always great things here on the College Football Recruiting Show. Blair, have a great weekend.
You too, Emily, and everyone in the chat as well. Can't wait to see you next week.